happens, whatever manifests, as being necessary for being there. And again, takes us back to the fourth point in the formula. Always stay in a positive state and give a positive definition, even if it's something that you objectively don't prefer, to whatever manifests, because you know it's got to be there for a reason that could serve you. And if you stay in the positive state, you will start defining things that way, just as that question has framed. Oh, well, even though this is not what I expected, even though this may even be something I don't objectively prefer, it's got to be here for a reason. So maybe the fact that this manifested now is preparing me for other things. But again, don't have any insistence on the idea that this must prepare you for the thing you thought you wanted to manifest. It will, however, if used this way, prepare you for whatever does need to manifest next, which might be more representative of what you originally thought, but it still might be different than you thought. So just stay in that state of acceptance and neutrality and positive ideas about why that manifested, so that in that neutral space you can allow whatever really does need to come in and fulfill what you actually need.
So like the person here that struggles on a day-to-day basis to be consistent in following the formula, and sometimes they don't feel like doing things they have to do, that, day-to-day things that
all right, again, look at the wording. If you have to struggle to follow the formula, you're not following the formula. It's as simple as that, because there's no struggle in following the formula. If you understand, here's the key, if you understand that that's actually a description of how reality works. It's actually a description of how you manifest things. Therefore, if you're struggling, you're actually giving yourself an indication that you have a belief system that is preventing you from actually following the formula. You have a belief that's actually preventing you from understanding what the formula is saying to you, of what it actually is. So if the struggle is there to follow it, that's the perfect opportunity to find out in your own self-investigation what you would have to believe is true about yourself in order to experience struggle in following the formula, in order to have a lack of understanding of what the formula is. So if the struggle is there, that's your first clue. There's a belief there that doesn't serve you. Take the time to stop and investigate what it is, because once you discover what it is and let it go, it's not going to be a struggle to follow the formula anymore, because you've let go of the reason why you're struggling.
It kind of reminds me of the idea of if you have a baby, and taking care of that child may be very difficult sometimes, and you're tired, and all of the things that may come up that don't make it feel exciting. But if you take a step back and you just recognize how much you cherish having the child, then that will shift your energy in relation to the tasks that you have to perform that are part of having that child.
And part of your joy and excitement, because you'll figure out how to do them differently that is in alignment with your excitement. That's what we're saying. There is no inherently difficult situation. Only beliefs make it seem difficult, because you're not necessarily doing it in the way that is representative of your joy. But you can't see the way to do it in the way that's representative of your joy if you're not already in joy. Because again, you cannot perceive what you're not the vibration of first. So you have to, again, understand how this works, and you have to understand that if you simply go into the vibration of joy first, different ideas of the way to do things, including raising children, will come to you that you couldn't perceive when you weren't in a vibration of joy. And when those new ideas come to you because you're already in a vibration of joy, you will see that those new ideas, those new inspirations, those new imaginings about different ways to do things, different ways to relate to this idea of raising a child, will start to give you other opportunities, other ways of expressing that relationship, and you will find that they will all start to dovetail with your joy.
Yeah, it seems like the idea is if you find yourself unwilling or uninterested in doing certain tasks that are actually associated with your excitement, then that's time to redefine and look for new ways to do that, or possibly even delegate it, because sometimes
that can be one way. It can be one way if that's what naturally comes out of your investigation. It can be one choice. But the idea again is whatever those choices are, they'll present themselves to you in a way that actually does align with your excitement.
And that's the beauty of synchronicity, because it keeps bringing you more things to work with.
Yes, and it keeps taking away things that you don't need to work with right now.
So, what about the idea of like self sabotage? Like, some individuals find that they try to do things in a certain direction, but then their own.
All right, well, again, we would assume by now that this would be relatively apparent as to what the answer is. Self-sabotage obviously involves belief systems about the self that dive into concepts like I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving, I'm not able, I don't belong, etc., 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 and therefore require some deep self-investigation as to why you would attempt to sabotage yourself from your own true self, why you would attempt to be something you're not. So the idea again is you have to look at those fundamental fear-based beliefs of lack of self-worth in order to transform that physical behavior, those choices of self-sabotage.
So, that idea of like it's self sabotage, but it's happening at a subconscious level.
That's why you have to investigate and bring the belief into the conscious light. Again, if it remains in your unconscious, you have nothing to work with. That's why the investigation about what you believe to be true about yourself is so crucial. And thus paying attention to what the fear-based belief is saying so you can hear what it's really saying and realize how much of what it's saying negatively about you is nonsense. You have to do the investigation. You have to make the unconscious belief conscious. Now, it's going to do everything in its power to prevent you from doing so, because that's one of the ways that the negative belief perpetuates itself, is by making it seem as if you have no ability to find it. And it may use emotions to prevent you from doing so. I'm too depressed to investigate myself. I'm too tired to investigate myself. This won't actually amount to anything to investigate myself. I am a victim and always a victim, and therefore there's no point in investigating what these beliefs are. All of these things come from the negative belief. You have to see through that smoke and mirrors. You have to be able to understand that it's not as difficult as the negative belief is making it appear, that that's just an illusion. You have to know how these things work. That's why we explain the mechanisms of these things to you all, so you can realize it can be much easier than you think, because once you understand how this works, and once you understand how beliefs perpetuate themselves, you will understand why they're saying what they're saying to you, and you will also understand the illusion in it, that it's not necessarily a fact, it's just a perspective coming from a negative belief that's doing nothing more than attempting to continue to perpetuate itself, which is what all beliefs are designed to do in order for you to be able to have a physical experience. Because if the belief systems couldn't perpetuate themselves in one way, shape, or form, there would be no possibility of having a physical reality experience, because it doesn't really exist unto itself. It only exists as a projection of your consciousness. The experience of it is real, but the physical reality itself is nothing more than a cardboard facade.
That's very helpful.
All right.
This individual says, I've had many experiences where I moved pencils like an instant manifestation in a way that didn't follow the laws of physics.
Well, it does follow the laws of physics, just not physics that you're familiar with yet.
And there was no intention of doing anything of the sort. It just like happened. So
yes, then for that individual, they have given themselves an opportunity through that experience of telekinesis to understand that physical reality is just a projection. The idea then is that whatever state they were in at that moment, every time they think about how that felt at that moment when that happened, puts them right back into that centered state of their relationship to the idea of physical reality as nothing more than a projection, which could, if used that way, if understood that way, for that purpose and that reason, put them in a state where they can allow themselves to, shall we say, shape their physical reality more effortlessly by simply knowing that they can always go back in that state, and that they are already back in that state just by remembering what it felt like to be in that state when they moved the pencil.
and
Now, one moment. This is also an opportunity for them. That's just the way this individual chooses to do it, the way they choose to experience this synchronous idea of being in a certain state of being that can allow them to move forward in physical reality in a more effortless way, almost by, again, giving a perfect example of the surrendering of needing to be in control. So that as soon as you actually go into that surrendered state, feeling like you're not doing anything, that is actually the state of most control, when you don't necessarily feel like you're doing anything. That's the path of least resistance. That's what it feels like you're not doing anything, because you're not really expending an effort. You're actually in the center of yourself, in perfect balance at that moment. And when you happen to take yourself into that state, it shows you what's possible in physical reality, and it shows you that it is possible, because physical reality isn't real. It's just a projection of the state of being of your consciousness.
That's amazing unto itself.
All right, if you say so.
Because, well, I mean, most of us wake up into a reality here where we have no idea that that's the way it's working initially.
Yes, but again, please allow me to just suggest a subtle correction.
Okay.
You don't wake up into that reality. That reality wakes up in you.
Oh. Even when there you are, a little baby just being born into the world.
Even then. Because you are not just a little baby. In fact, as a little baby, and for quite a few years, you are still very loosely connected to the idea that physical reality is real. You kind of go back and forth into the spirit, into the physical dream, into the spirit, into the physical dream. And the idea is that you're absorbing what you need to absorb to play out the theme that you chose to play out in this physical experience. But remember that babies are not just babies. They are still extremely powerful spirit beings, testing the waters, navigating themselves into whatever way, shape, or form the situation needs to be to allow them to play out and experience the theme they chose to experience by absorbing whatever belief systems they need to absorb in order to transform them in the future in the way they need to become more of themselves from a different point of view.
Pretty amazing.
All right. Again, if you say so.
If if the heart has this direct connection to the higher mind, why do we experience heartbreak?
Well, again, because of the belief systems within the idea of the physical mind. Because again, remember, while it may experience the direct energy of the higher mind, the heart still has to take its cue from what the belief systems in the physical mind have to say about it. And therefore, heartbreak is another bounce. So higher mind to heart, through the filters of the physical mind's belief systems, back to the heart. That's where the heartbreak can occur, because then the original vibration is filtered through the belief systems that may be negative belief systems that then the heart will interpret as the idea of sadness or heartbreak or loss.
Okay.
On your world.
But since you're so conscious,
Yes.
would a spirit, like, what dimension is that for you? Because you're already having a lucid dream and are in spirit halfway.
Yes, but that doesn't mean there isn't more to perceive, that there isn't more to experience, and that there isn't more to learn from even higher levels.
Because there's always more.
There's always more, and there's always higher levels of spirit guide.
So, and do you actually have names for your spirit guides or anything like that?
We don't have names for ourselves, so no.
Right. So how do you relate to your spirit guides?
Very well, thank you. Again, we relate vibrationally. We recognize each other and spirit guides and any beings vibrationally.
Okay. Well, that's got a pretty good vibe to it.
Yes, it does.
So here's just a few ET questions.
Oh, all right.
Okay, in a previous transmission, you mentioned that the blue men ETs often resurrect humans who have been killed in war and bring them to a safe planet.
Yes.
How did the human circumstance attract the blue men in the first place if they were dead and in spirit?
Well, again, it depends upon each individual's theme and journey in what they have chosen in life and what they have chosen in what you typically call death, which again, to many beings, isn't much different. So the idea is that they have simply, either by their culture, been more open, or by their journey of choice or theme more open to having that as a probability as part of their journey, that they would be shifted in that way to another reality through the auspices of what you call death, which again, from higher beings' point of view, isn't really that much different than life. So, in many cases, it's simply part of what they chose to experience for a variety of reasons, and you have to take it on a kind of a case-by-case basis as to why they wound up transitioning that way.
Are humans immortal on this unnamed planet? And how do they go about their lives without human romantic partners?
No, they're not really immortal, though they may be much longer lived. And who says they don't have partners?
Right.
The idea being that you have to understand that the majority of the Blue Man Society is physical. It's only a few that have taken upon themselves the ability to become energy and transform themselves and change their shape, appearing somewhat human or simply as energy. The entire society isn't that way. Most of them are physical. Therefore, there are many beings in that society for humans to interact with. And of course, remember that when they are introduced to that society, they're not necessarily exactly the kind of human they used to be. They are shifted to some degree into something more compatible with that society.
And this is kind of funny because the person asks, did the Blue Men influence the rock band, the Blue Man Group on Earth?
Indirectly, but that's not the only influence. Remember that, as we have said, in ancient times, through the interactions with the Anunnaki themselves had slightly bluish tinted skin. So there's an indication of the ability to sense that there is some importance, shall we say, to presenting yourselves as a blue man, both because of the intuitive connection to those ETs called the Blue Men, but also to the intuitive connection of the ancient Anunnaki that created Homo sapien. Now, the rock group may not necessarily be consciously aware of this, but just like so many creative ideas that exist on your planet, some of them are the result of people's intuition tapping into things that are going on other levels of reality that they may not be consciously aware of, but they are creatively willing to express, not necessarily knowing where those ideas came from or where they tapped into to get the idea. So yes and no.
Because there was also this question of why is Krishna and other rishas in yogis depicted with blue skin?
Same idea. Exactly the same idea. You're tapping into the fact that in ancient times, there were beings that actually had blue tinted skin, and you are then letting those ideas blend into an archetypal presentation or representation of what early humans related to in those beings as gods.
Okay, and then finally, how can we tell the difference between a dream and an out of body experience as it relates to UFO and ET encounters?
Well, again, remember that when you are actually out of body, you'll know the difference. When you are waking up and have what you call a dream, that is often simply the physical mind's best attempt to represent something that might have happened in another reality, on another level, in another dimension, out of body. How can you tell the difference? Well, the more you open up and ask for more conscious awareness of what is going on, it will usually be given, and you'll become more lucid in that experience in a way that will allow you to retain the lucidity when you wake up in physical reality, to know the difference between something that might simply have been a dream in the classical sense, or something that might actually be a memory of an experience you had on another level. So it's really about, again, clarifying the self and asking and knowing you can handle more conscious awareness of what is going on and allowing yourself to become more lucid in those experiences at the same time becoming more lucid in the physical reality dream too. So that there isn't as much difference between the two states as you've been taught to believe there are.
Okay. And so thank you so much. We just all love you so much.
Well, our unconditional love to you all for the co-creation of these interactions, it is absolutely our passion and our pleasure to interact with each and every one of you and all of you together. So we congratulate you on your recent shift in energy and direction and acceleration. And there will be more to come now that you have opened the gates to more information that is relevant for the new vibrational state you are beginning to create. So now, to crystallize all of this, please enjoy your meditation.